Call it Tales. Hello, and welcome to Storytime with Isto. You've reached chapter 27 of Tarot Tales, a weekly gathering where I tell a story most folks don't know well, based upon a tarot card and paired with mixed drinks, soft and hard. You'll find these recipes just below with other ways to stay in the know. Or leave some feedback while you buy, as long as you like and subscribe. Those of you that were with me last week know that this week we are talking about the Knight of Swords, which is this really powerful card, as all of the Knight's cards tend to be. Now, before I talk to you about the symbolism in here, I want you to take just a minute to look into this card and see what kind of things stand out for you. Any symbolism or any energies that you're pointing out, please drop in the chat or leave in a comment. The things that I notice in this card, first and foremost, is that we've got kind of opposing motions. We've got this energy kind of pulling out this way, and then the reverse energy with these trees kind of falling backwards here. And this is kind of representing the fact that this soldier, this knight, is going into the storm, kind of against all of the energy that's pressing forward it. So this could mean fighting the elements. This could be just fighting against any kind of energy that's happening. And the knight is kind of coming downward energy. So it's almost as if we're coming off of a huge leap. So a very aggressive entry with the sword kind of lit up here. I also love that the horse is kind of looking back and being like, what the hell are you doing? Do you know what's going on here? We also have butterflies here on the saddle of the horse, which represents kind of more metamorphosis and change. And we've got birds, which represents the air element, of which we have a lot. And we have a couple little birds up here in the top left, and these kind of winged plumes right here. So all kind of like airy elements, but birds also represent intellect. And that is also typically what the sword suite is also pointing towards, things about knowledge. So if we take this kind of feeling of aggression and we put it inside of the intellectual sphere, we're maybe jumping into battle in an intellectual way, very thought-based, very reasonable, maybe actually pretty probably quite aggressive. Could mean something a little bit dangerous, or it could just mean a really hard-fought battle. Now, we drew this card reversed. And that means that perhaps we are not winning that battle. Perhaps that arrogance and intelligence is misplaced in some way, and we're putting it in the wrong energy. And we have a great story for you for all of that this week. But before we dive into that, I want to talk to you about the cocktails. Now, I am drinking this lovely little juicy grapefruit cocktail that I've called the Mystic Schadenfreude. And for those of you that are drinking the mocktail, we have what is called the Bee's Peas. And if you're drinking that, I'd love to know where you got your honeycomb, because that was really hard to come by. Regardless of whether or not you're joining me with a beverage this evening, simply for being here, I say a hearty cheers. Let's give it a shot. Ooh, ooh, a lot of whiskey in that. Delicious. All right. So the story this week, as you may have already been able to tell, we're trying something a little different. As we have been trying a lot this season. And this story is going to get started in a chicken coop with a mother and her hens. The story that I'm telling you this week is called Medio Polito, which I found when I was looking at folktales for Puerto Rico. But it turns out after more research that this story originated in Spain. So if you look at the actual source text, you're going to see that there's like kind of a mixture of all of these things. We're going to count it towards Puerto Rico because it is told in Puerto Rico. But I did just want to call it out for honesty's sake. And so let us dive right on in with this incredible Knight of Swords story tale. Chapter 27, Medio Polito. Once upon a time, there was a handsome hen who had a large brood of chickens. They were all fine, plump little birds, except the youngest, who was quite unlike all of his brothers and sisters. Indeed, he looked as if he had been cut in two. He had only one leg, one wing, and one eye, and he had half a head and half a beak. His mother shook her head anxiously, saying, "Oh, my youngest born is only half a chick. He can never grow up a tall, handsome cock like his brothers. They will go out into the world and rule over poultry yards of their own, but this poor little fellow will always have to stay at home with his mother." And she called him Medio Polito, which is Spanish for half chick. Mother Hen loved Medio Polito just a little bit more because she felt sorry for him. So it happened that with all of this extra attention, Medio Polito became very arrogant and conceited. He had but one eye, one wing, and one leg, and yet gave himself more airs than his father, who himself was the finest, bravest, and most gallant cock in all the farmyards for 20 miles around. The young cockerel grew up to believe himself to be the phoenix of his kind. And if the other young cocks made a mock of him, he thought it was from envy. And if the young hens did the same, he said it was because they were enraged that he took so little account of them. One day he turned to his mother and said, "Hearken, mother, I am sick of this chicken coop. It is too small, and I am resolved to go to the big city with important people. I wish to see the king and queen." The poor mother began to tremble at hearing these words. "Oh, my son," she cried, "who has put this extravagant idea into your head? Where will you find a yard like this one that you have? Where will you find a more magnificent coop, more nourishing and abundant food, a more sheltered hen yard to walk about in, or a family that would love you more?" "Nego!" said Medio Pollito in Latin, for he plumed himself on his learning. "My brothers and cousins are ignorant bumpkins. I intend to go where the king and queen live. I want to meet them. Everyone here is very stupid and inferior to me. I must be among my brethren." "Oh, but my son, have you not seen yourself in a mirror? Don't you see that you have a foot and an eye too little?" "Oh, as far as that goes, I must say that you ought to drop down dead with shame to see me in this state. It is entirely your fault. From what sort of an egg was I born into this world?" Mother Hen sadly lowered her head until her beak touched the ground. She felt helpless. She couldn't give Medio Pollito his missing half. She whispered, "Oh, forgive me, my son, even though it is not my fault. I don't know what to tell you. Yours was the last egg I laid. Perhaps that's the reason. In the big city, I will find a doctor who will operate on me and add the parts that I am missing. I'm leaving as soon as I can." Medio Pollito interrupted her rudely. Since it was useless to change Medio Pollito's mind, Mother Hen decided to give him some advice. "Listen to me, my dear son. I have two pieces of advice for you. Never walk in front of a church. St. Peter doesn't like roosters. And above all else, stay away from cooks. Those are your worst enemies. They are the experts at wringing chickens' necks. She then gave him her blessing, a peck on the cheek, and prayed to Saint Raphael to save him. Medio Polito flapped his only wing, crowed 3 times, and hopped out of the chicken coop to conquer the world. A little later in the day, as he was taking a shortcut through the field, he passed a stream that was almost dried up, for it was summertime. And it just so happened that the slender thread of water was hindered from flowing by a few branches that had fallen across its bed. On seeing the traveler, the stream said, "Blub, blub, 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 blub. Oh, thou seest, friend, how weak I am. Scarcely can I move a step. I have not strength to push aside these branches that block up my way, neither can I make a round to avoid them, for it would exhaust me to nothing. Thou couldst easily get me out of this difficulty by parting the branches with thy beak. In return, thou mayest not only quench thy thirst in my current, but reckon on my services as soon as the rains of heaven have restored my strength." "Help you indeed!" exclaimed Medio Polito, tossing his head and shaking the few feathers in his tail. "Do you think I have nothing better to do but to waste my time on such trifles? Help yourself and don't trouble busy travelers. I'm off to the big city." And hoppity kick, away stumped Medio Polito with 3 signature crows. The stream screamed after him, "You'll need me someday." Further down the road, Medio Polito found a dying breeze lying on the ground. "Dear Medio Polito," he said, "in this world we all have need of one another. Come near and look at me. Do you see how the summer heat has laid me low? Me, who lifted the waves on high and leveled the plains. Me, who found nothing to resist my power. These dog days have killed me. If you would just lift me 2 inches from the ground with your beak and fan me briefly with your wing, I should be strong enough to take the flight and to steer my way to the cavern where my mother is patching some old clouds that I rent asunder. There she will give me something to refresh myself, and I shall recover my strength." "Look, you dumb wind! You're getting what you deserve! You're staying right where you are! You've bothered me enough already! You've spread my feathers apart since I only had one leg, and you've pushed me against the wall! I've gotten a lot of bumps and bruises because of you, you mean bad wind!" And with these words, he crowed thrice very loudly, and went on his way as proud as a peacock. A little while later still, Medio Polito came across a field of grass that was on fire. Smoke rose high into the sky, and fire was everywhere. Soon it died down, and he drew near, where he saw only a tiny spark residing in the smoke. "Dear Medio Polito," said the spark on seeing him, "you have come just in time to save my life. For want of fuel, I am at my last gasp.
I don't know where my cousin the wind has betaken himself, for he was always around to help me in cases like this. Please bring some straw to revive me.
What business of mine is this? I'm not a farmhand to gather hay for you. Snuff out,
replied Medio Polito. The spark gathered together its last energy and yelled after him,
I'll remember you. Someday you might need me too, you fool.
At this, Medio Polito got so angry at the spark that he stomped on it with his only leg until it became only ashes. At which point, he crowed again in his regular manner. It wasn't long before Medio Polito finally reached the capital. And as he passed in front of the church in the center of town, he found that people referred to it as St. Peter's Church. And so he went forward and crowed till he nearly cracked his voice. For no reason than to put St. Peter in a rage and to enjoy the pleasure of disobeying his mother. Upon approaching the palace thereafter, he would have gone in to see the king and queen, but was stopped by the guards at the door, who told him, "Go away, back!" And for the first time in his life, he was afraid, for the guards had guns. So he turned about and found a way in the back door. He saw people hustling and bustling about, and he asked what these people were, and overheard that they were cooks. Oh, well, what a delectable opportunity. Another way to turn his mother's advice away. So instead of running away, he went in, crest and tail erect. And one of the king's cooks grabbed him immediately. "Ah, here is the very thing I want," he exclaimed. "The king has just sent a message to say that he must have chicken broth for his dinner. Delicious." And then he plopped Medio in the broth pot that was standing near the fire. Ugh, how wet and clammy the water was. It went all over Medio Polito's feathers, making his feathers feel loose in his skin.
Oh, dear water friend, don't scald me too much. Have pity on me,
begged Medio Polito.
Do you remember me? Did you have pity on me when I asked you to push the branches that were in my way?
Water asked, continuing to bubble away as the half-chick's feathers fell off. And sure enough, Medio Polito looked worse for the wear. The cook then picked Medio Polito up and placed him over a spit. It was very, very hot. Medio Polito looked down and said,
Fire, oh blazing fire! You that are so powerful and so brilliant, take pity on my misery. Restrain your ardor, extinguish your flames. Do not burn me.
You fool! Don't you remember me? It was that little spark that begged you for help to not let me die. But did you help me? No,
said the fire. And in fact, so angry at Medio Polito was he that he was not content with browning him. Instead, he burned him up till he was completely black as a piece of charcoal. When the cook came forward to grab the chicken to make the broth, he realized that he could do nothing with this charred chicken, and so he threw the chicken out the window, whereupon he was picked up by a summer's breeze.
Oh dear wind, my dear, oh, worship of the wind, that reignest over all, and obeyest no man, powerful amongst the powerful, have compassion on me. Leave me at peace. I want to lie down on earth. Drop me anywhere, under a tree. Don't take me up high. Don't drop me. I have already suffered so much. Please just leave me be.
Medio Polito sobbed.
Leave? What are you saying? Roared the furious wind,
Snatching him up in a whirlwind and twisting him in the air like a top.
Don't you remember when I pleaded with you to give me just a little shove, to lift me off the ground? Did you help me? No, you insulted me. I won't leave you. No, not for as long as I live.
And the wind lodged Medio Polito on top of a bell tower. Whereupon St. Peter came forward, and in vengeance for the crow cocking in front of his, for the cock crowing in front of his church, affixed him there permanently. Thenceforth, he occupies this position, blackened and shrunken, without a feather. He is no longer called Medio Polito, but Weathercock. And you must all know that he stands there to this day, bearing the shame for his disobedience, his pride, and his wickedness, at the mercy of the wind, at the mercy of the sun, and at the mercy of the rain. Round and round he goes until the wind stops blowing. The end. I really love this story for the Knight of Swords because the protagonist is clearly very smart and also very arrogant and definitely falls in their own ways. It's also just a beautiful anti-hero. I also like that you kind of start the story thinking that we're going to feel bad for the rooster, which, in a more nuanced way, we do, but he's kind of a dick and he goes off and disregards all of these people. There are some versions of the story where he's nice to all of these elements, and his place as a weathercock is kind of a place of honor, but most of the older stories don't do that. I also love an origin story. Never going to look at a weathercock the same way. How delicious, right? Alrighty. Now, for my gratitude this week, we landed on tails. So I've got a little tail here for you. My gratitude this week goes to James and Laurel. And I thought this was fitting for the Knight of Swords because I remember one time I was about to I was trying to figure out what classes I was going to take for college. And I really wanted to take Russian. And I had signed up for German. I had signed up for Spanish. I had signed up for French. But I just didn't think I was smart enough to take that class. And in that moment, around the Winedale table, the two of them listened to me and they kind of got exasperated by me saying I wanted to do one thing, but then saying I couldn't do it. And they were like, well, you've convinced us. You're capable of doing it, so you should sign up. And I did it, and it worked out. So that's maybe not so much the knight, but definitely the swords. So for the two of you, I send a hearty gratitude. And I also burn you up. Next week, we've got another very special variation on these themes that we've got going on. I hope that you'll join me. And with that, it's time for us to part ways. May you be happy. May you be healthy. May you treat yourself with love and respect. May you continue to grow and find the strength to persevere through the painful parts of growth. May you find inspiration all around you. And may you find peace. Thank you for joining me this week. Until next week, bye, y'all.